Let's talk tires. What kind of tires do I choose? What size should I go with? What's going to perform the best? All over social media, there are all kinds of these posts. What kind of tires should I put on my vehicle? Should I go with all terrain or mud terrain? Should I go with bigger? Should I go with wider? Is the stance going to work? Is the on-road behavior going to be nice? How do they perform off-road? Are they loud? There's all kinds of questions that are associated when it comes to choosing the right tires for your vehicle. So in this video, I think what I've decided to do is to kind of simplify it and make it easier for you to be able to not only make that decision, but to educate yourself on what's out there, why there's so many options, and what tire is actually going to suit you the best. Now, real quick disclaimer before we get deep into this, let me just state that at the end of the day, it's your decision on what you put on your rig. I'm not here to tell you what kind of tires you should put on your Jeep, but I am going to tell you what the differences are, why there are so many options, and hopefully help you make a wise decision. First, let's talk about the different types of tires that are out there. Now, I've broken this down into three different categories. So the first category we're going to talk about is going to be all-terrains, or your AT tires. Now, these tires here, they're pretty much your well-rounded entry-level off-road tire. Why? I mean, they have really good road manners. They tend to look aggressive, but they're not really focused on anything specific off-road. They can pretty much handle a little bit of everything. Not a lot of everything though. So like a little bit of dirt, a little bit of sand, rocks, maybe the occasional mud puddle or rain or snow or so on and so forth. And honestly, you probably be really satisfied with those. Um, but their primary purpose is to give you that little bit of off-road capability while still maintaining excellent road manners and not really hurting your fuel economy too bad. So all-terrain tires are a great way to get started in this world. Now for me, I've been doing this for a long time. When I first started playing in the off-road world, all-terrains were pretty much all the rage. Of course, that was back in the 90s, maybe more so towards the turn of the century, but that was the tire to go after. They weren't necessarily oversized. I mean, the goal back in 1996 or 1999 was 33-inch tires. I mean, if you had 33-inch tires on your rig, man, you were king, and it was great. All-terrains were a great option because you could still drive it to work every day, but you could dive off the beaten path and have decent traction depending upon where it was that you're going. So unlike street tires, basically all-terrains stepped up the game. They added more rubber to the sidewalls, more steel belting in them, a little bit deeper tread, a lot of times a little wider tread blocks, so that this way you still get the traction in conditions like this. But all-terrains, we found out over the years as we were using them, did have a little bit of a flaw to them. So for the real off-roader, the biggest flaw of an all-terrain is how tight the tread still was. So if you got into a situation where you were really, really deep in snow or really, really deep in mud or clay or swampy conditions, the tread would clog up and it would make it so that the tires just they wouldn't grip to anything. Now, it was great as far as desert use or standard trail riding or going down to the lake, but as the world of off-roading pushed forward and needed more of that off-road traction, well, the all-terrain, it kind of fell a little bit short. That led to the birth of the mud terrain tire, or the MT, which is going to be our second category of off-road tire. Now, there's two big reasons why the mud terrain started becoming really, really popular. One was the release of the JK. Now, the reason why is because by about the mid 2006, 2007, 2008 era, well, 33s were more standard equipment on your trucks, your SUVs, and your Jeeps. So 33s were no longer the goal. We wanted to go bigger. 35s, 37s, even in some cases, 40-inch tires. Well, an all-terrain in that size just wasn't holding up. So the manufacturers started really pushing for mud terrain tires. They spread open the gap between the tread blocks. They deepened the tread blocks. Once again, they strengthened the sidewalls just a little bit more to be able to handle the abuse. Now, when it comes to deep mud conditions, swamp conditions, really deep snowy conditions, or we found in severe rocky conditions, that gap in that tread made a lot more sense in keeping the tire clean so that it didn't clog up and getting that grip and that dig and that bite towards what it is you're trying to conquer. So, our second category, being the MT tire, became very popular around the release of the JK. And that popularity really hasn't died off as it continues to push. But with the introduction and the push of a mud terrain tire, there were a couple of flaws that came along with it. Flaw number one with a mud terrain is road manners. Now, when it comes to off road capabilities, man, the mud terrains are great. They grip to just about everything. But that wide tread block and those deep lugs, whew, man, that made for a little bit of a rough ride going down the road. And they're loud. All right. That air gap between those tread blocks tend to scream going down the highway. Some people don't like that. They're like, you know what? I want to drive my Jeep or my truck or my SUV or my off-road vehicle to work on a regular basis. I don't want to be annoyed and frustrated at the amount of noise that it's making. So all terrains were a little quieter. Mud terrains tend to be a whole lot louder. But the manufacturers stepped up and they started redesigning the mud terrains to try to attack that flaw. However, there's not a whole lot you can do. For the most part, mud terrain tires are going to be louder and a little bit less mannered on pavement when you're going down the road. But they became available in your much larger sizes: 35s, 37s, 38s, 40s, even 42s, and very quickly became very popular when it came to off road use. Now, one thing that we didn't talk about when it comes to all terrains is one thing they have over mud terrains is 90% of them have a tread life or a mileage warranty. This is the manufacturer telling you, you know what? Regardless of the aggressive nature of this tire, you're still going to get 40, 50, even 60,000 miles out of it. And if you don't, we're going to back that up. And that's great. Well, when the mud terrain tire hit the market, these manufacturers are like, you know what? Depending upon how they use it, we can't guarantee anything. And so there is no mileage or tread life warranty when it comes to a mud terrain tire. Now, you have some I've seen that make it 10 to 15,000 miles worth of use and they're toast. And then you've got cases like the mud terrains I just took off of my Jeep, where I made it 78,000 miles before I decided, you know what, that's about as far as I'm going to push them. And that's fantastic. But there's no guarantees. There's no way to know. That same set of tires on somebody else's may not last that long. So the two biggest flaws with mud terrain tires is going to be they're loud and obnoxious and don't have very good road manners, and they don't come with any sort of a tread life or mileage warranty. But you know what? Don't let that discourage you, because mud terrain tires, even to this day, are still probably the most popular off road tire that people put on their rigs. All terrain tires, mud terrain tires. Well, for the most part, those have been the kings of the off-road industry. All-terrain's more popular about, I don't know, 25, 30 years ago. Mud terrain started gaining popularity probably about 15, 20 years ago. But I did at the beginning of this video mention that there's a third category. Well, what is that third category? I mean, all-terrain, mud terrain, that's what we hear all the time, right? In the last maybe 5 to 7 years, there is a new type of tire that has started gaining popularity in the off-road world. Once again, innovation and changing the way that we look at an off-road tire. So the third category of tire is your hybrid. This is a tire where the manufacturers decided to take the best of your all-terrain and the best of your mud terrain and try to combine it into one tire. But what does that really mean? Well, the manufacturers took into account what we were saying as the consumers for their products. Your mud terrain tires have no road manners, but they handle fantastic off road. Your all terrain tires are fantastic on the street, but they lack a little bit on some of your more aggressive off road conditions. So, companies started releasing tires like their RTs, XTs, and whatever initials that they decided to use for their hybrid tires, where they basically took the best of their all terrain design and their mud terrain design and they put it together. Now, the advantage to this is you get your road manners back and you still have a nice, aggressive, off-road capable tire with a thick sidewall, plenty of rubber, and the ability to go just about anywhere that you want to go. But just like the other two, everything has its flaw. So where is this one going to fall short? So let's talk about the flaws of a hybrid tire. Well, it's not quite an all-terrain, so you might have a little bit of road noise, okay? But it's better road comfort than a mud terrain, so at least there's that, right? Well, it's not quite a mud terrain either. So it may not be able to conquer every one of those hardcore obstacles, but it's going to do it better than an all-terrain. Basically, it's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, okay? You find a tire that you can throw right down the center and say, hey, for those of you that still want to drive your rig to work and every weekend go out and enjoy the sport of off-roading, here's a tire that can meet your needs. Oh, and a lot of manufacturers have started going back to putting tread life warranties on their hybrid tires, which is great because at least you know that we're back to a product that should last you 40, 50, or 60,000 miles, however much the manufacturer feels that their tire design should make it. And if it doesn't, well, you got a little bit of recourse there. So it's a good in-between tire for those that are not hardcore off-roaders or once-a-year off-roaders. This one runs about straight down the center. So for those of you that know me and have followed me on Facebook and Instagram and here on YouTube for the many years that I have been trying to help those in the community help make those decisions, you'll know that I have personally been a huge fan of the mud terrain tires for a long time. The on-road manners, they don't really bother me. I mean, I still put quite a bit of highway miles on my Jeep, don't get me wrong, but the noise, the little less traction on the road, it's never bothered me. Here's what did bother me, okay? As a lot of you know that have been paying attention, is I got a little over 78,000 miles out of my last set of BF Goodrich KM3 mud terrain tires. I was actually really proud of that, and I was really impressed with how well that tire handled, how comfortable it was to use, the fact that no matter how far I aired them down, I never got a puncture, I never had a failure, and I got 3.5 years and a ton of miles out of them. But here's what I wasn't impressed with, okay? I reached out to BF Goodrich. I emailed him multiple times. In fact, at several of the expos like Overland West, I went to the booth and talked to the guys at BF Goodrich and told them my success story. And I'm like, seriously, I love your product. This is fantastic. And you know what? They could not care less. Well, I'm a big advocate for customer service, and I'm a big advocate for those that are going to play in this world should be a part and enjoy the excitement of what is included in this world. Don't you agree? So, since I wasn't impressed with how BF Goodrich was actually treating me when I had a massive success story for their tires, I started reaching out to other brands. And at the expos and over emails, I started talking to companies like Toyo and Nitto and Hankook and Cooper. And I started telling them, look, this is what I got out of my BF Goodriches, and it's time for another set of tires. What do you think I should do? Well, that's where I started bumping in to that third category, that hybrid tire, which I, up until that point, had ignored it off to the side as, okay, that's something different. I'm satisfied and I like to stick with what I have. So I started doing the research and I started watching some videos and I started digging in to what those hybrid tires are. And then I started developing a relationship with a couple of sales guys with a couple different companies. And you know who came out on top? It was Hankook. So throughout several conversations, we talked about it and we said, you know what? I'm going to give the Dynapro XT a try. Now, I use this vehicle to drive pretty much anywhere I go from where I live is the highway. So, a minimum of 50 miles a day on road. But I also use it off road on a regular basis, teaching the off road classes that we have on the weekends, or simply go out and exploring on my own or making YouTube videos for you. So, we talked about, can this tire handle the abuse that I throw at it, especially after what I just put my BF Goodrich tires through. So we worked out a deal, and they actually sent me these tires to try them out to see if I was going to be happy with a hybrid tire versus a straight up deep lugged mud terrain tire. So let me just give a shout out to Hankook Tire and say thank you for sending me a set of these tires to try. What do I think so far? Well, I've had them on the Jeep for a few days now, and most of the driving that I've done for the last few days has been on the road. And I will say, immediately, compared to my mud terrains, man, the road manners on these things, fantastic. They are quiet, they're smooth, and 80, 85 miles an hour, it's like driving a Cadillac. I'm actually really impressed considering these are still deep lug tires with a decent gap between them. There's no road noise. So at least there's that. Now, the other thing that I'm impressed with, and that's just only what I've noticed over the last 3 days of using these tires, is my gas mileage hasn't been nearly as bad as it was with my mud terrains. Now, with those BF Goodriches, I was getting probably about 11 and a half, maybe 11.7 miles to the gallon on a regular basis. Well, my driving in the last 3 days, according to my dash, I'm closer to about 13.6. So I actually got to say, I'm impressed with that. But what about their off-road capabilities? Now, that's the trick, right? Off-road capabilities, especially for somebody like me who does spend a large amount of time off the beaten path. So, I don't know yet. I haven't had them very long. I just got them installed. I've only had an opportunity to drive around the city of Las Vegas and to and from home, and this little bit of dirt that I've been on once or twice in the last few days. I'm not really going to express an opinion there. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use these for a couple of months, holding my classes, teaching people how to air them up and air them down, going over the same obstacles that I encourage you when you join my class in order to do. Plus, I have a couple of adventures planned for me and a few buddies where we're going to go and see if we can get into some trouble. So, in a couple of months, I'm going to touch back I'm going to let you know what I think about their off-road capabilities. But in the meantime, back to the point of the video, this is a third relatively new category when it comes to an off-road tire. But what about you? Okay. What type of tire is going to fit your purpose the best? Well, we covered what the three major categories are, and I hope that that kind of answered some questions. One, your all-terrains have great road manners, and they're pretty decent for hitting the trails, okay? And for the beginner, for the entry-level off-roader, I'd say that's a fantastic place to start. But if you're looking for something that's a little bit more aggressive and capable off-road, and you're willing to sacrifice the on-road manners, the behavior, and the noise level, then a mud terrain is a great way to go, because a mud terrain is going to get you to probably a lot more places safely and comfortably over what an all-terrain can do. But frankly, if you want the best of both worlds and still drive it to work every day, use it every weekend off-road, then according to everything that I found, your hybrid tires are the right down the middle of the road and maybe the next best thing that hit the off-road market. So folks, here's what I want you to do. In the comments below this video, I want you to put which type of off-road tire do you think is actually the best for what you want to do off-road. Your all-terrains, your mud terrains, or your hybrid in category number 3. I'm actually really curious. And like I said, when it comes to mine, I've always been a category 2 guy. I've always been that aggressive off-road mud terrain tire because my split is a little bit more off-road. But I'm going to give these hybrids a shot, and I am anxious to see if they are able to keep up with the lifestyle that I lead off-road. So I'm not here to push a brand. Okay. Now, Hankook was very nice to me, and they sent me a set of tires to give a try. So far, I like their tires, and their customer service has been above board compared to pretty much anybody else that I talked to. And I tried to reach out and talk to and have a conversation with Cooper, Nitto, and BF Goodrich in addition to Hankook. So take that for what it is. Okay. If you're big on customer service, then you know what? Take a look at the Hankook Dynapro line. They do have aggressive MT tires, and they have your standard AT tires. They give you a little bit of all three options. All right, folks, if you have any other questions or any other concerns, please put them down in the comments below. I hope that this video answered some questions and helped to clear the air on what type of tire should I put on my Jeep. Okay, they have their pros, they have their cons, and at the end of the day, it's really up to you on what you're looking for out of your tire. So, real quick, before I end the video, there is a special message in the description of this video for those that are dealing with the death wobble issue on the Jeep, especially those local to Las Vegas. I'm super excited about this, so check out that message below and shoot me an email if it's something that you're interested in. In the meantime, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Jeeping for Beginners, and once again, my name is Josh. So if you have any other questions, I can't wait to hear from you. Otherwise, folks, as always, stay safe and happy Jeeping.